Welcome to our weekly meta roundup for Pokemon Pocket. It looks like Golem was overhyped, Celebi might finally be finding some stable footing, and Aerodactyl EX is having a breakout weekend. Let's go ahead and dive on into all of the juicy details from the over 3,000 deck lists played in Pokemon Pocket's 4 largest tournaments in the second week of the Mythical Island expansion. Let's kick things off with some week-over-week starting metagame distributions to get a feel for which deck lists are being registered in our tournaments. Predictably, Pikachu EX and Gyarados EX paired with Greninja saw a large starting metagame share increases compared to the first week after their strong performances. Mewtwo also predictably dropped off a fair amount after a fairly flat performance in the first week. Celebi dropped off a little bit less than I was expecting, decreasing only 25% overall. The biggest loser this week is definitely the Weezing Scolipede deck. It was 9% of the week 1 entrants, while only being 2% of the second week. This really doesn't surprise me, considering Mewtwo is the primary deck that it looks to prey on, and that deck's metagame share has receded quite a bit. Next up, it's worth pointing out that the Golem Druddigon deck that spiked first place in the largest tournament during the first week burst onto the scene, being 6% of the total decks registered in these week 2 Mythical Island tournaments. Moving along to our performance metrics for the week, we're going to be comparing the starting distribution among the over 3,000 deck lists played compared to the distribution of the same archetypes inside the 280 deck lists from this sample that had 70+% win rates in our tournaments. We see a somewhat similar story this week among our top 3 decks. Both Pikachu EX and Gyarados EX see performance increases overall, albeit a good bit smaller than the performance increase they had week 1. Mewtwo, similar to last week, remains relatively flat, converting its starting percentage to a similar rate of our top performing deck lists. While Celebi's performance metrics aren't necessarily impressive this week, it's exactly flat, remaining the same between the starting distribution and our top performing distribution. It is worth noting that last week Celebi had underperformed by 50%, so hitting a dead even this week is a large performance increase to what it had during week 1. The Golem deck is certainly the biggest loser this week in terms of performance metrics overall, with it taking a 6% starting metagame share down to just 2% of the top performing decks. Personally, I'm not super surprised by this result. I think Golem, while powerful when everything comes together, is ultimately a 4-card combo, i.e. a stage 2 plus a copy of Brock or 2 to really get online quickly enough, which is going to be fairly inconsistent across multiple tournaments like we're seeing in these results. Our breakout deck for this second week, though, is definitely Aerodactyl EX paired with the newest Primeape. This archetype accounted for only 2% of registered deck lists overall, but it accounted for almost 5% of our deck lists among the top performers, which is a 150% increase from its starting sample to this top performing sample. Looking at the details in this Primeape Aerodactyl deck, I think it's easy to see why we're seeing such a strong performance here. Having access to Hitmonlee in your fighting toolbox tends to give you a strong matchup into the Gyarados decks, and having access to Primeape as a fast attacker that's fighting typed makes you quite strong into Pikachu EX, the other most popular deck in the format. Marshadow is a force to be reckoned with, especially in the Pikachu matchup, as if they knock out your Primeape, Marshadow can clear Pikachu EX back from full health in a single go, thanks to that fighting weakness typing. While the Primeape version of Aerodactyl EX was definitely the most popular, there were also a number of other variations of this Marshadow Hitmonlee Aerodactyl EX shell that found success this week. One that caught my eye was this build playing 2 copies of Tauros as well as an additional copy of Mew. I like this particular list because in my experience, while your Pikachu and Gyarados matchup tend to be quite strong, you can have a little bit of a harder time into Celebi with your smaller attackers that can often be blunted by copies of Erica. This makes Tauros a phenomenal attacker when paired with Giovanni that can clear Celebi in a single hit. There were also a number of people playing this Aerodactyl EX, Marshadow, Hitmonlee fighting core, leveraging Farfetch'd as their additional attacker as opposed to Primeape. This change trades a little bit of power of the 50 damage 1 energy attack for consistency in Farfetch being just a basic attacker that's only one card. You also gain 2 extra deck slots by playing only a basic, giving you more room to play utility trainer cards that can get you out of sticky situations. While Aerodactyl EX had a ton of powerful results this week, it's worth noting you can play this fighting core without them as well. Myself and a number of others put up top results in tournaments this week with a far-fetched Hitmonlee Marshadow core playing Mew EX and Tauros as your additional artillery attackers. I really like Mew EX as a way to give you extra counterplay into Mewtwo, and Tauros is stellar into both Pikachu and Celebi matchups. The big upside to playing all 8 Pokemon as basics is you get to play 12 utility trainers, which gives you a lot of flex to outmaneuver your opponent in key spots. Without spending too much time on them, I'd like to give an overview of the latest bits of technology and innovations our most popular archetypes went through this week. For Pikachu EX, most notably, the Zebstrika builds have predictably become both the most popular and the best performing. Zebstrika is one of your absolute best possible tools for poking down Magikarps and Greninjas, hiding behind Druddigons looking to get set up. While there was not a ton of innovation in the Gyarados Greninja decks overall, there are a number of people experimenting, most notably with copies of Blue, which I think is a phenomenal innovation. Blue means your Magikarp survives a single hit from a Hitmonlee or a Zebstrika, tagging it while it's on your bench, which can give you key time to evolve it up into Gyarados and live to get attacking. The most successful Mewtwo EX decks have largely settled on playing only a single copy of Mew EX as a 5th basic, but there is still a ton of variation in the supporting trainers that they are playing. One deck list that jumped out at me when browsing through everything was a 9-1 performance that was playing the full 2 copies of Blue. This is a phenomenal inclusion in my opinion. It allows your Mewtwo to survive a side drive from opposing Mewtwo's, as well as blunting the blow of a Mew that's looking to come up and knock your Mewtwo out once you start blasting with it. The big innovation in Celebi decklist this week is the inclusion of Exeggutor EX and Execute as a 2-of in the best performing variations. This innovation doesn't really surprise me. Adding more basic Pokemon and diversifying your strategies seems to be the key to success in most archetypes in Pokemon Pocket so far as they get optimized. Exeggutor EX can often win games completely on its own with its aggressive starts and its big body, and only needing 1 energy to attack can give you plenty of time to build up your Celebi EX organically, meaning you don't need Superior in order for it to be winning games of Pokemon Pocket for you. The last part of this meta roundup video is always my favorite. I spent a bunch of time digging through that other category that was highlighted and found some of the most interesting top performing deck lists from our tournaments this week. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? We kick off the off meta decks with a Alakazam variation featuring Druddigon and Sigilyph as a front line with a Singleton Mewtwo EX as an auxiliary attacker. I really like the structure of this deck list and my experience trying to work with Alakazam. It's frequently powerful but can't single-handedly carry a game on its own, often leaving you feeling like you want a secondary attacker. It's very difficult to fully assemble 2 stage 2s over the course of the game, but a single Alakazam and a single Mewtwo EX is definitely something that can get set up pretty consistently, especially if you have time to stall. I also like that Mewtwo EX, while being able to be your secondary attacker, can also act as a frontline wall, simply soaking damage and taking a bunch of hits for you to then leaf back to safety and start blasting with your Alakazam in the mid game. Next up, we have a Greninja Druddigon deck playing Mew EX as an alternative finisher. I love a few different things about this core a lot. The first is that because Mew EX and Greninja can work off of some colorless energy, you get to play fire in addition to water in this shell, meaning Druddigon can be an attacker when that's good for you. Mew EX gets to serve double duty here in the games like Mewtwo or Charizard, where it's a good finisher. It gets to be your artillery attacker, but in matchups like Pikachu, where it leaves a little bit to be desired, it can frontline for you while you set up Druddigon to actually do the attacking. Our copy of Budding Expeditioner means that our 130 hit points Mew are absolutely stellar at stalling games out. Next up, we have another two-color Greninja deck, this one featuring the same fighting core we talked about a good bit earlier of Marshadow, Farfetch'd, and Hitmonlee. I really like the idea of playing Farfetch'd as your early attacker in these two-color shells, as it reduces that starting energy variance by a good deal. I also love how Greninja pairs with Marshadow in particular, since it's a good aggressive attacker that your opponent needs to knock out, but they only claim one knockout point for it, letting you tee up Marshadow to be extra powerful. This deck list actually put up a number of results in different tournaments over the course of the week, and if you want to see it in action, I posted a highlight with it yesterday that you could find linked in the video description down below. Next up, Pocket's premier budget deck list, Blaine, put up a handful of results this week as well. All of the deck lists were electing to play the new copy of Ponyta, which doesn't surprise me, but trainers seem to be split overall on exactly what they want to do with Rapidash. Our sample list here is playing one copies of each, but it's noteworthy that a number of others were electing to simply play two copies of the original Rapidash that just attacks for one energy. Moltres EX, Arcanine EX continue to be the best performing fire deck in our format, albeit in a fairly small sample size. This archetype lines up really well into both Pikachu EX and Celebi, while having a solid matchup into Mewtwo as well, thanks to the addition of Mew. Its definite sticking point in this format is that it has an absolutely abysmal Gyarados matchup, simply not able to break down their Druddigon walls fast enough before Gyarados gets online. Something that's noteworthy across all the most successful variations of Arcanine is the two copies of Giovanni, which doesn't surprise me because you need that to hit that 130 HP breakpoint on opposing copies of Mew EX. Starmie EX. Lumion spikes a singular tournament result for a second week in a row, with the deck list this week notably including a copy of Mew EX and Tauros EX as supplementary attackers. I think going up in basics is always a stellar idea, and I like the coverage that both Tauros and Mew can provide inside of this core. Something that's especially interesting to me is the inclusion of two copies of Leaf, despite a lot of the stage 1s here all retreating for free. The objectively best Kanto starter Blastoise spikes a tournament result this week alongside its old friend Starmie EX. Most notably, they're being played alongside one copy of our new Eevee as well as Vaporeon as a way to shift those energies from Starmie over to Blastoise once our boy Blue is ready to start blowing away the competition. Something that I think is noteworthy about Blastoise is that the way its second attack is structured, it means that it gets to attack for 160 into opposing copies of Mew, while Mew only hits it for 100 back, unless that Mew happens to have 5 water energy on it as well. Next up, we have a Machamp EX deck, which is likely seeing success in part due to Marshadow and Hitmonlee carrying a lot of fighting decks in this format. We also see the inclusion of two copies of Druddigon, who are not only excellent at enabling your Marshadow's revenge, but are also stellar at buying you time for setting up your stage 2s, which can occasionally be a bit inconsistent. Finally, we have a Pidgeot EX deck list that's following a very similar core to the Machamp deck we just looked at. We have Marshadow and Hitmonlee as ways to give you counterplay into things like Gyarados, and we have two copies of Druddigon set up to buy us lots of time when our stage 2 doesn't come together easily. If you haven't done so already, please consider smashing that like button to help this video reach some more people. And if you happen to be new here, perhaps subscribe to the channel as well. If you enjoy no BS, analytically focused, data-driven breakdowns of what's going on in Pokemon Pocket's metagame, this is definitely one of the best channels for that here on YouTube. If you're not familiar with me, welcome. My name is Jeff Hoagland. I've been playing card games competitively for decades, always trying to build my own decks and play them in tournaments competitively. I also have a graduate degree and undergraduate degree in mathematics and spent time teaching statistical and other math concepts at both the high school and college level. We're always looking to level up our game and improve here with whatever we have going on. I appreciate you making it all the way through to the end of the video, and hopefully your next pack is an excellent one.